Some of you folks have written into old Grandpa's shop and suggested that it wouldn't hurt to go into a few of the aspects of poetry of which you are either unaware or marginally aware. Don't mind doing that. I didn't really want to turn this into a poetry lesson, but if it makes you happy, I'll be happy to share with you any kind of information that I think you might enjoy or would make your enjoyment of poetry all the more. First of all, please be advised that you do not have to have a rhyme in poetry. It does not have to end in a vowel sound or whatever and still qualify as poetry. However, there has to be some kind of rhythm for poetry to exist as a poem. It's one of the great things that separates prose from poetry. There are lots of very specific ones, such as the kind of rhythmic pattern that you find in almost all of Shakespeare's plays, where he speaks in blank verse, it's called, and it is simply unrhymed iambic pentameter. What is iambic pentameter, you ask? Glad you did. Iambic rhythm is simply rhythm that goes ba-bum. If there are 5 of those, ba-bum, 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 in a line of poetry, that's called iambic pentameter. It may be useful not only to remember, but to understand more clearly that the reason that iambic verse is more popular than any other style is when you recognize the fact that it mimics the sound of the human heart. Ba-bum, ba-bum, lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And the fact that there are 5 of those units in a line is the most natural rhythm in the English language. As we go on, I may suggest other kinds of rhythmic patterns that you'd be interested in, perhaps. Anapestic rhythm, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum. But today, I was going to concentrate on a verse form that does not have a regular rhythm. The rhythm is there. It's supplied by the poet, but it's just not as regulated as others are. This first poem is by E. E. Cummings, and some of you probably started to smile as soon as I got the first E out, because he's a very quirky poet. This one's called Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bill's defunct, who used to ride a water-smooth silver stallion and break 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pigeons just like that. Jesus, he was a handsome man. And what I want to know is, how do you like your blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? If you examine that poem with any intensity, the word that jumps out at you in the early part of the poem is the word defunct. It's pretty obvious, at least that I would think, that you expect that to be dead, not defunct. And yet E. E. Cummings is kind of insisting on that, and you are inclined to ask yourself why until you get to the end of the poem. And then the suggestion is made by Cummings that death only gets the worn-out machinery. We get all the good parts. We get the memories. We remember that he broke 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pigeons just like that. And he was a handsome man. And sort of in a cocky way, The speaker of the poem says, "How do you like your blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? All you got was the worn-out machinery." Maybe it'd be a good idea to read it again, and if you choose to, you can apply some of those observations to the poem as you hear it the second time. Buffalo Bills by E. E. Cummings. Buffalo Bill's defunct, who used to ride a water-smooth silver stallion and break 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pigeons just like that. Jesus, he was a handsome man. And what I want to know is, how do you like your blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? There's an arrogance of that last line, that you're talking to death directly, mano a mano, and saying, you got the worn-out goods, and we got the great things. I thought this poem by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, called Constantly Risking Absurdity, might pair well with the one that we just read by E. E. Cummings, the one called Buffalo Bills. Here you have a very readable rhythmic pattern. He's talking, as I'm sure you will discover very early, about a high wire walker in the circus. And he says, constantly risking absurdity and death whenever he performs, above the heads of his audience, the poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making and, balancing on I-beams, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entreshots and sleight-of-foot tricks and other high theatrics, and all without mistaking anything for what it may not be. For he's a super realist who must perceive taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance toward still higher perch, where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap, and he, a little Charlie Chaplin man, who may or may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. You want to talk about that one a little bit? The title of the poem is, I think, particularly important. We understand that this is about both poet and acrobat. The high wire walker in the circus, let's say, and the poet. If the high wire walker is clumsy and falls, he does so at the risk of his reputation as an artist. And Ferlinghetti, or the speaker of the poem, is saying, same is true for the poet. If he puts one out there for the general public and says in effect, like my stuff? And they go, no, I don't like it at all. That's absurd, which is a kind of a death to the poet. It may be an actual death to the acrobat. He continues the back and forth kind of rhythmic pattern that I tried to endorse in my reading of it, because that's kind of, I guess, what it is to engage in poetry. A couple of steps forward, maybe a step back. No, not that word, this word. Oh, don't put my foot there, says the acrobat, or I'll fall down. And it's that comparison that I think is interesting and informative. So I think that's going to probably be it for today. I hope we haven't overdone the explanation at the expense of the poems, but we're going to try it for a little while and see how it is. Let us know if you want more of that kind of investigation and explanation, or less of it, or that's fine. See you next time in Grandpa's Workshop.